All right. Yeah, it's great to see everyone here today. Have a ton of people joining, which is great. Thanks for taking some time to join us and get ready for BioTrack in New York. So, what we're covering today will be just touching base again on the BioTrack migration deadlines and how we are thinking about those here at Canix. We'll also go over some of the tag requirements in BioTrack, and we have some updates on our side that'll be rolling out this Friday that'll help make the migration process a little bit smoother. Um, and then we'll also talk about just what are we doing at Canix to help prepare for this migration. We'll also touch on some of the things that you can do in the upcoming weeks to prepare for migration as well. And then we'll go over just a few things about what's next, the other webinars that we're available in the next few weeks here. And then, of course, we're going to save some time for your questions and feedback as well. This is like a great time to let us know what you're not sure about, what we can make clearer, what additional resources we can provide. We're still about 7 weeks out from this first deadline, so still plenty of time to provide more information to you guys. So please let us know what we can do to help. So starting off, just going over some of the deadlines here. So I'm sure you're all aware already of the deadlines that were shared by the Office of Cannabis Management. We have August 1st for cultivators and micro businesses, September 1st for processors and distributors, and October 1st for dispensaries. So we do not expect these deadlines to be moved back. There's been no indication from the state, so we fully expect to need to go live on or before these dates. From what we've seen with migrations in other markets, these types of deadlines just don't seem to get moved. So yeah, we're fully expecting these will be the deadlines, and that's what we are prepared for here at Canix. As far as when the actual migrations are run for your facilities, at Canix, we would prefer to run different migrations over the week or two leading up to the deadline. So what I mean by that is we can provide better service to you all, be able to answer your questions more quickly as you're preparing for your migrations if we kind of spread those migrations out over the days leading up to the deadline, as opposed to having, all facilities going live all at the same time. So we'll touch on it a little bit later, but we will be collecting some preferred migration dates from you all for each of your facilities. And we'll try to stagger the migrations a little bit just so we can better support you all in this process. So yeah, look out for that. And yeah, we appreciate any flexibility there. If we can migrate some facilities a couple days early, that is helpful. As far as like the actual migration of your inventory, all of that is automated. It's prep work to be done to add some additional information, items and vehicles and drivers. And we want to make sure, we have plenty of time there to help you all out with that as you're filling in that data. So that's our game plan for the migrations here, hopefully running those a little bit in advance of each of the deadlines for those of you that are open to it. We also have an important release coming out on June 13th. So that is this Friday morning, where we will be requiring 16-digit numeric tags in New York. And so that's a big purpose for this webinar today. We're going to go through why we're making those changes and, basically what this means for you all and how this is a benefit in helping to prepare for the BioTrack migration. So a little bit more on this release. Why are we making this change right now? So BioTrack on their side, they require all tags, all barcodes for inventory, both packages and plants, to be 16 digits, and they need to be numeric, and they also need to be unique across the state, of course. So there's a mixture right now of tag formats in Canix. Depending on your facility, you might have 12-digit, you might have 16-digit, you might be using some characters in your tags. And so what this release on Friday will do is it's gonna make these tags and barcodes uniform so that they match the BioTrack requirements. So you may be wondering, why are we doing this now? We're still 7-8 weeks out from the first deadline. And the reason we're doing this now is because when we might get inventory over to BioTrack, essentially what we'll be doing is we'll take your data that's in Canix now, say you have a 12-digit plant tag. We'll send that over to BioTrack and say, hey, we want to create this plant. Here's the barcode that we would like to use, and we would like this 12-digit barcode to become the BioTrack barcode. And BioTrack is going to look at the format of that tag, and they are either going to accept that as the ID or they're going to reject it and give you a randomized 16-digit ID of their own. So by getting all of your tags in this correct format in advance, we can make sure that those tags are accepted by BioTrack as opposed to being rejected. And the big benefit here is that way, for anything you've already barcoded and tagged physically, you won't have to go back and re-tag that inventory. So that's why we're making these changes here. So just to be clear, if you have like 12-digit tags today, when we send those to BioTrack, those are going to be rejected, and BioTrack's going to issue a new 16-digit tag, which you'll need to put on the indent. So on Friday, starting Friday, you'll start to see whenever you're creating new packages or plants throughout Canix, that could be creating a package from a harvest, in manufacturing, split package workflow, combined packages, updating growth phase to move plants to the vegetative phase. All those different actions are going to require 16-digit numeric tags. And in an effort to make sure that these are unique across the state, you will also see a unique 4-digit facility ID that is entered as the first 4 digits of that 16-digit tag. So the remaining 12 digits, you'll still have the flexibility to edit those. You'll no longer have the flexibility to enter text in there. It has to be numeric, but you will still have some flexibility there to edit the last 12 digits there. And as far as how that's going to look in the UI, we'll have this tooltip that's going to appear anywhere that you're creating new tags as well. Just a reminder for why these changes are in place, and it also links to our Help Center article. So in that Help Center article, you can just get more information about BioTrack tags in general, and just a refresher on why we are making these changes. So I'm going to pause here for just a second to address some of the questions that are coming in. One moment, please. So one question we got here in the chat are the 16-digit number tags required for non-cannabis inventory as well. So things like your packaging materials, fertilizer, stuff like that. So 16-digit tags are not required for non-cannabis inventory, and we are not going to be making any changes to how lot names are defined or how tags are defined for non-cannabis inventory. And then will we be able to choose our own unique facility IDs? We will not have any capabilities to change the facility IDs there. They will be consistent though, once that ID is set for your facility, it isn't going to change at all. So in this example here, if we're seeing 0110, that is always going to be that unique prefix for any new tags that you're creating. So it will be like identifying in that way. One thing I failed to mention earlier that I also want to mention is that this is only going to affect your new tags. So all of your pre-existing tags They will not be affected. They will remain exactly as they are today. We had one more question here. Yes, if we are already using a 16-digit tag, do we still have to update our existing tags? So for existing tags, I think the best approach for existing tags is to leave them as is. For a lot of packages, they may already be sold, or you may already have consumed them by the time the migration comes around. Same for plants; they may already be harvested or destroyed by the time it comes around. If you have 16-digit tags already, that's great. You should be in a good position to hopefully have most of those tags accepted by BioTrack when we run the migration. So yeah, no editing of existing tags with this change, just for newly created tags going forward. There's a question here as well about if we have a 12-digit tag already, could we just place the unique facility ID in front of the 12-digit tag? So that's certainly an option that we could execute in the migration. I think if you already have it tagged with a 12-digit barcode, you'll still need to, relabel and re-barcode at some stage. So we were planning on waiting for the migration to do any re-barcoding or relabeling that's required. Certainly, if you guys think it would be more beneficial to do some of that relabeling and barcoding in advance, we can definitely consider what a solution there would look like. One of the sort of risks of trying to re-barcode too much in advance is there's always the chance that BioTrack may reject an ID that follows these rules. So and there is some flexibility in the 30-day window after the migration deadlines to adjust inventory and get everything labeled and things like that. So we think it probably makes most sense to relabel, rebarcode at the time of migration. But if there's any other preferences around that, please let us know, and we can consider if we can help with rebarcoding in advance. I think that's all we have for questions for right now. So I'm going to move along to the next slide here. After the migration, how are you going to know which of your inventory needs that relabeling and needs that rebarcoding? So we're going to provide some, call them retagging or relabeling reports. So this will be for your plant inventory and your package inventory. And basically what these reports will show is your current BioTrack ID after the migration. And then we'll also show whatever your tag was before the migration. So for tags where BioTrack accepted the ID and allowed us to keep it the same, those two fields will match, and you won't see those on the retagging report. We'll just show you in these reports any cases where the new BioTrack ID does not match previous Canex ID. So these lists will be downloadable, so you'll be able to download that as a CSV. You can copy and paste a list of IDs into the Canex inventory tables, into packages, into plants. That'll filter those tables down just to those IDs. And from there, you can go to download labels and print out your new labels as needed for that inventory. So another thing we'll be doing as well is we'll also show the current BioTrack ID and then the previous Canex tags on your package tables and on your plant tables. So let's say, for example, you run the migration, some of your plants were on 12-digit IDs, and you still need to be able to search those plants, scan those plants, take actions, update locations and things like that on those plants before you've had a chance to go and physically relabel them all. So that previous Canex ID field is still going to be available for you, so you can continue to operate off of the existing Canex ID while you're in the process of retagging any plants or packages that need to be retagged. So if there's any other questions about tagging in this change that's coming out Friday, please feel free to get those in the chat so we can address them. But if not, we'll roll on here to a little bit about what else Canix is doing to help prepare for the migration. So first of all, just as a reminder, I think we've communicated this previously in emails and our previous webinar, but Canix is already integrated with BioTrack. So we've integrated with BioTrack when they were in Illinois. We have an integration in New Mexico as well. And we also have an integration with BioTrack in Florida. So that Florida version of BioTrack is the same API, same setup as the New York version. So we are already fully integrated with all of the core compliance workflows, and we are ready to go in that regard. There's a few other things we're doing as well. We will have a migration helper tool in app. So this is something that will really be for admin users at each facility to help populate some of the data that is missing for us that we need to send over to BioTrack. So for example, we have item type in Canix right now, bulk flour, for example. These item types have different names in BioTrack. So we'll need you to map your current Canix item types to the correct BioTrack product categories that you would like them categorized as. So for example, maybe bulk flour would become flour lot in BioTrack. Additionally, there will be some finished good items in BioTrack, various edible items, for example, that are required to have an individual unit weight. So that's another case where we'll have an uploader where you can upload what those weights should be for each of your items. There's also a little bit of additional information required regarding vehicles and drivers as compared to what's currently required in Canix. So we'll have an uploader there to add some of that data as well. And an additional thing this migration helper tool will be used for is just verifying your inventory is up to date. So it'll kind of act like a checklist, letting you know the various pieces of data that we're going to be migrating and prompting you to go and check that inventory data is up to date before we run the migration. So there's a lot to get into there, and we will have a separate webinar in the next couple weeks here where we'll dive in a lot more detail to exactly what this migration helper tool looks like and the additional information that you'll need to go and collect and provide. But this is just kind of a high level view here of what that helper tool will do. Moving on, production key tests. So Monday this week, the Office of Cannabis Management and BioTrack announced they have activated the integrator sandbox. What that means is we have our New York sandbox now that we can interact with and test with. There's also a testing process that we will be going through with BioTrack in order to get our official production API key. So this is something we did in Florida. We went through a very similar process and we got the key there with no issue. So no concerns on our side. We did want to let you know though that until we go through this testing, which was made available this week, we won't be listed as an approved integrator yet. So actually, when you go to the OCM website right now, there's no one listed there as an approved integrator. That's just because BioTrack just released the sandbox and we have to just go through these testing steps before they will publish us as approved integrators on their website. So we're in progress on that as of this week, and we'll certainly let you know once that's official. One other thing that we're working on with the Office of Cannabis Management and BioTrack is figuring out a little bit more information about how transfers are going to work between BioTrack facilities and non-BioTrack facilities during this migration period. So, for example, on August 1st, all cultivators will be switched over to BioTrack. When they transfer inventory to a distributor or a processor or directly to a dispensary. The cultivator is going to be basically creating a transfer in Canix that we will then send over to BioTrack. There will probably be a temporary extra step where the cultivators will also have to verify that that transfer was accepted by whoever they're sending it to. So we're waiting for a little bit more information from the OCM there about how they want that to work. They let us know on Tuesday this week that they should have some information out, or excuse me, Monday this week that they should have some information for us shortly. But that's just something to be aware of, that transfers will work a little bit differently in this time period from, August 1st to October 1st, because not everyone is going to be on BioTrack. Once everyone switches over to BioTrack, it will be a lot simpler. You'll just basically create the transfer in Canix, we'll send it to BioTrack, and then when that transfer reaches the destination facility, when it gets to that time where it was supposed to be delivered, it'll just appear in the destination facility. They'll accept it, and when they accept it, we'll send that information to BioTrack. So it'll be a little bit more streamlined after the migration period, but we're just exploring exactly what this is going to look like from August 1st to October 1st in the meantime. A couple questions to touch on here. So one question is, will we retain the ability to create custom subtypes in Canix? Also, will there be the same amount of different item types, or will they be partially consolidated? Great question. So the subtypes will remain available. Those will be completely Canix only, and you'll be able to define the subtypes however you would like to. You can kind of think of our current item type list is going to be replaced by a new list of product categories in BioTrack. I'm going to skip forward here to our appendix because I think we have some examples of what we expect these new item types to be. So you can kind of see the list here of what some of the new names will look like. And so, for example, where we have I think we have an eighths item type in Canix today, right? That will fall under the usable cannabis item type in BioTrack. So just as an example for how you might map these. So we are kind of restricted on the item types in terms of just what's available in BioTrack, but we still have the flexibility with subtypes, free to input whatever you would like to input there. Yeah, there's another question here. Where do I find my number for the facility license for the first 4 digits to label packages? So that number is automatically going to be populated. I'm just going to go back to previous slide here. So we're talking about this unique facility ID in the bottom right here, in this case, 0110. So that will automatically be populated on your behalf in the tag field when you're creating new tags. So you don't need to go find that. If you are curious about what your ID will be beforehand, you feel free to shoot me an email and I can find that out for you at canix.com. But yeah, you don't necessarily have to know what that is. We will pre-populate it for you. And if you try to submit a tag that doesn't start with those 4 digits, you'll get an error message. And so that way it'll be enforced that you use those same 4 digits for all of your new tags. Another question here, this one is about transfers. Will the transfers from our cultivation facility show up as incoming transfers in our processing facility? So, great question. That is how it will work in the long run, right? In the short term, what we'll have to figure out is, if those facilities aren't going to be migrated at the same time, that's what we're looking for, a little more guidance from the Office of Cannabis Management. What we think will happen is that in this situation where cultivation facility is on BioTrack, processing facility is not on BioTrack, probably the processing facility will still need to go and create an incoming transfer and specify the tags that are being transferred over. We're still figuring out the exact details here, and we will definitely get into this in a lot more detail on a webinar in the coming weeks here. Next question, can you view BioTrack inventory without having to pay for the BioTrack service? So for you guys, you shouldn't need to pay for BioTrack at all. It's important to understand with BioTrack that they have a couple of different products. So they have a product that they sell to states like New York, for example, and that software companies like Canix can integrate with. So that's something that's all really bought and paid for either by the state or also through the tags that you will need to purchase as well. So there's no need for you to pay any additional fee with BioTrack in order to see your BioTrack inventory in Canix. So really no reason to pay any additional fees with BioTrack. You may hear about a BioTrack commercial product, which is an user interface that gives you access to your BioTrack inventory, and you can make various updates there. There's really no reason to use that. You should have all of the capabilities that you need, and you'll be able to see all of your inventory and have additional features like non-cannabis inventory, all just in your Canix facility. So that's it for questions for now. Just coming back here to what else we're doing on the Canix side to help prepare for the migration. We're also working through some documentation for the workflows that are going to be changing. So there are definitely some differences between Canix, disconnected from any compliance system, and Canix connected to BioTrack. So we have some help documentation that's publicly available already. I'll send the links around to all of our New York related Help Center articles after this call as well. So feel free to, start digging into what some of those differences look like. That's another area where we will have additional webinars to go over, how do cultivation workflows change, how do packaging and processing workflows change. So at a high level, what you should be aware of, the harvest and manicure creation, the UI is a little bit different. And especially for when you're doing fresh frozen harvests, you have the opportunity to basically capture the weight that you're going to package while you are creating the harvest instead of creating a package from that harvest after the fact. So that's something that will look a little bit different once you're connected to BioTrack. Destruction of cannabis materials is also different. So plants and packages, when they're destroyed, you have to schedule that destruction 72 hours in advance. So there's this sort of waiting period, 72 hours before you can actually fully destroy that inventory. Kind of a two-step process in that way. You will be able to undo scheduling an item for destruction. Say you schedule plant for destruction incorrectly, you will be able to undo that. Once you complete the destruction, though, after the 72 hours, that action cannot be undone. So that'll be a little bit different than the current destruction workflows. And for cannabis waste as well, all waste in BioTrack will be packaged and labeled. And then to get rid of that waste, you'll need to go through this scheduled destruction process to remove that waste from your facility. So those are some of the big changes. One other that I would mention to look out for is plant batches will be going away as well. So you'll still be able to track plants in their immature phase. We have custom growth phases where you can track those plants that are immatures if that's important to you. But BioTrack does require that every single plant, regardless of the growth phase or size, is individually tagged and tracked once it becomes a plant. So the other option there is you can store clones or immature plants as a package. So instead of having plant batches for your immatures that maybe still have a higher death rate, you would have packages instead. and you would just make adjustments on those packages as the immature plants die off. And then once they're a little bit more stable, you would unpack those into plants. And then at that point, every plant is tagged individually. So those are kind of just highlighting some of the bigger changes to be aware of. And we will be having additional webinars to go over those in depth as well. A few questions coming in here. Is there a max number of units that can be assigned to a single tag? I am not sure about that, but I can certainly look into that. I'm assuming that's in reference to plants specifically. But yeah, we can look into how many units can be associated with a tag. What is the reason for the 72-hour wait period? Does this include waste packages created in manufacturing batches? So yes, waste packages created in manufacturing batches will also require that waiting period. My understanding of why that's required is it gives a window for an auditor to understand when you're going to be executing a destruction of cannabis material, and to be able to come in and audit that process and ensure that it's being done in the way that the state expects. That's my understanding of why that 72 hours is required. Yeah, and there was just another question on the 72 hours before destruction. What is the need for that? Again, it's just something that's enforced by the state. I believe the intention is that it helps them be able to audit that process of the destruction of cannabis materials. In some other states that use metric, for example, there were times where you would have to schedule your harvest in advance, and for the same reason, the state wanted auditors to be able to come in when the harvest was happening. So, unfortunately, that's kind of the reasoning there behind the 72-hour wait period, but definitely a big change from how it works today, and good to be aware of that. I have not seen this as part of the regulations. Where does this come from? Again, this is just our understanding from talking with some of our operators that we work with in Florida that has the same requirement for the 72-hour period. Definitely, we are not, do not represent the Office of Cannabis Management or the state of New York. So if you want to get a more explicit answer for why that's required, definitely encourage you to reach out to the Office of Cannabis Management, and, they'll be able to provide some more detailed reasoning there. One more question here about, will anything similar be required for package adjustments? That's a great question. I will look into that. I'm not quite sure if that will also be required for adjustments, or if some small adjustments will be allowed without needing to schedule that product for destruction. So we will look into that one and get back to you. This is what we're doing at Canix to help prepare for the migration. We're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming webinars in a minute, but first wanted to touch on what you all can do to get yourselves prepared for these big changes. So the first thing is make sure that your inventory is up to date in Canix. There will be some sort of window after the initial migration where there's some flexibility about, updating inventory in BioTrack, but we really want to make sure your inventory is accurate and up to date leading up to these deadlines, so that we can just make sure everything's nice and clean and there's no issues whatsoever. So, make sure you're staying on top of your inventory in Canix today and keeping everything up to date. That is a huge thing you can do to get yourself prepared. Another thing that's important for us to understand is if you have any situations where you might currently be operating in Canix with a single facility, but that one facility, you're expecting to have separate license numbers in the future, or if that one facility currently has separate license numbers. So this may have happened if you had like a preliminary license that was then separated into multiple licenses, or maybe you were onboarded with a single license in Canix and you started adding inventory from another license to that license. We absolutely need to know about this in advance of your migration. When we send the inventory over to BioTrack, it's obviously critical that we're sending that inventory to the correct license number in BioTrack. The same goes for facilities or license numbers that have been given permission to operate under multiple different addresses. We also need to know about that. We just want to make sure that we are sending over the correct information to BioTrack. And in some of these cases, it might be required. Say you have 2 license numbers under a single Canix facility. We will very likely need to separate that out into 2 Canix facilities, and we will work with you on the easiest way to do that, if that applies to your situation. I think this is mostly should be exceptions. These are, I think, pretty unique circumstances, but if you are aware of these issues for any of your facilities, please email myself, ty@canix.com, and also add in help@canix.com, and we will help you get that sorted. The other thing you can do is start to take a look at some of the materials on, these new workflows in BioTrack. So we have a Help Center article in place already that goes over a lot of these differences. And yeah, great to get yourself familiar. We will be having webinars to, again, go over those workflows in more details, but probably good to familiarize yourself in advance if you have some time to do that as well. The other thing that's very helpful right now is if you can send us your preferred migration dates. As I mentioned, towards the beginning of this presentation, we're going to try and avoid having migrations for everyone, all on, say July 31st, for example, right? We're going to try and spread out the migrations a little bit so we can provide you all with better service and support leading up to your migration dates. We do have a Google form where we're just collecting your preferred date, and we'll send that around after this webinar as well. And of course, as well, if you have any other questions or feedback, email myself, ty@canix.com, and help@canix.com. And yeah, we'll try and get you answers to any questions you might have. So last slide here before we just touch on a little bit more Q&A. What's next? So like we talked about at the beginning of the call, the next immediate thing to be aware of is June 13th. That is this Friday. So it'll be the morning of this Friday. We will be releasing these new tag requirements, 16-digit tags. There's nothing you necessarily need to do in advance of that release, other than just make sure your teams are aware. There's no change in workflow or anything like that necessarily. It's just good to let everyone know, what's going on. And so, there's no confusion or things like that with that change. Other items we have coming up are workflow webinars. These will likely be separated out. We'll have one most likely for cultivation and then a separate one for processing. And we'll probably go over any kind of distribution related changes on both of those calls. So we'll have some workflow webinars to go over what's changing in BioTrack. And then we'll also have a separate webinar to talk specifically about the migration helper. We mentioned a little bit about item and product categories, as well as individual unit weights and some additional information that's needed about vehicles and drivers. And on that call, we will just go over that in more depth. So look out for invitations to these upcoming webinars. And with that, we'll just, we'll touch on a little bit more questions and feedback. So if you have any more questions, please drop them in the chat. And if you have any feedback as well about ways we could communicate the changes better, about resources that you need for you and your team to be successful with this, please let us know. We have some time before the deadline still. So let us know now what we can do to help, and we'll do what we can here. Another question here, just to confirm, current package tags will remain the same. Any packages created after June 13th will have the new format. So yes, that is correct. Current packages will stay the same. Any packages or plants created on or after June 13th will have this new format. But all of your current plants, all of your current packages, all of those tags will remain the same. Obviously, we just want to make sure you can leave those barcodes on your inventory as is and continue to, scan and search that inventory. I believe that was our last question here in the chat. So with that, we'll end just a little bit early here. Thank you all so much for joining. We'll send recording, slides, help center, and the additional webinar dates over email. And yeah, appreciate you all for your time. And again, please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or feedback for us here at Canix. Thank you all so much.